In this episode, we sit down with Prady, the co-founder and CEO of Sync, a real-time lip-syncing API. We discuss personalized ads.
It would just be kind of almost a dystopian nightmare at some point, but it'd be crazy. Like, you walk around a store and then you get just some synthetic ad that's targeted to you, just telling you exactly what you want to hear.
The challenges of building a foundational model company.
Different skin tones, different skin colors. They're all challenges that you don't really think about until you start building this stuff.
And the paper that I saw but didn't read. So I did see this paper that I didn't read, but it was about models that can smell. Let's get started. So first time we met, or I reached out on Twitter. First thing you worked on, what was it? Oh, the deepfakes, right?
Fake time.
Fake time.
Yeah.
And you kept trying to do it in, so just a little backstory. What is fake time?
So it was an app where you could video call your favorite celebrity and talk to an AI clone of them in real time.
Yeah, and I reached out because I was like, okay, this is
Not
sick.
exactly legal.
Yeah. Not exactly legal, but hey, if you want to call Kim Kardashian. Because I remember that was one of them. And so I reached out, I was like, I don't think fake time is it, like, or FaceTime, because real time, I don't think people actually care about this that much, but there are so many other things. And then he dropped this banger video, which was, he put himself as a replacement for Johnny Depp in, I think, the Sauvage video, and it looked so crazy, because it was like, what should have been Johnny Depp, but just him.
Is that the one where he's like in the desert?
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
car.
yeah.
I saw that. That was really good.
Those models are so fun. I think that class of models is just like, it's like something visceral about them, you know, like they just make you feel some type of way.
Is that the same model? That's not the wave to lip model. That's some
No,
other
that
like
was face
diffusion
swap.
model.
Yeah, that was face swap. And does a great job. Like facial tracking, everything throughout the whole video was amazing.
Yeah. And I remember at the time we brainstormed a few ideas around that. I don't quite remember what some of them were. Oh, there was actually one idea that we had, which was a lot of people respond better to things that are similar to them. So instead of having a white person in some ad in like the Middle East, why don't you just swap it with their most famous like Middle Eastern actor? So it's not really localization, but it's more so like making it more culturally relevant. And that's kind of like a quick way to do that that's pretty cheap. So that was one idea with like face swap.
Oh, it's like localization taken to its limit. Like, it's not just the language is right, it's the people are right, the customs in the video are right. Like, yeah, you could change so many small things in a video to make it just seem like it's actually designed for you in a different environment, which is super cool. Like changing, for example, like if there's like a Coke can, changing a Coke can into like a Mexican Coke. Imagine that. And like going,
real time in like or maybe not real time, but in like the Mexican version of whatever, some show.
yeah, and imagine just like recording one ad, putting into something like some sort of like Facebook ad manager, and then hitting click, and then just distributing it across every locale, like every place, with a video that's just is tailored for that like a person in that region. I think that'd be crazy.
Yeah, that would be insane.
And you start to how micro can you go with those different regions, right? Like you could think country by country, obviously, but what about state by state, right? Like in California, you have the California Coke brand or whatever, and then in Montana, you have like the Cowboy Montana Coke brand, which is like slightly different. I don't know. You start to get like pretty interesting outcomes when you do that at scale at like a very personalized level, I think.
Yeah. And also even just like at a high level, you have product placement in movies and in cinema. And when some movies get taken to like different countries, they get distributed, sometimes they just absolutely take off. And now there's an opportunity for a sponsor to come into this video where they have product placement and be like, hey, actually, it's taking off in this country. This is my country. I know the people. Here's my product. Instead of having this ad shown in the background or this box of cereal, show this one instead, which is kind of crazy. And then you also touched on Facebook Ad Manager and just having personalized ads at scale. Do you have any other thoughts around, like, besides just having the images changed based on the audience, any thoughts of just personalized ads?
That was like the Johnny Depp video. That was basically like exploring that idea and taking it to its limit too. It's like, instead of just localizing it to a people or a culture or a region, localize it to a person, right? Like make every ad individualized to that human. And we already, like, there's so much data available about like what your preferences are, like what do you like, what do you not like. Like I'm sure I mean, there's got to be some sort of product out there where, yeah, it would just be kind of almost a dystopian nightmare at some point, but it'd be crazy. Like you walk around a store and then you get just some synthetic ad that's targeted to you, just telling you exactly what you want to hear.
Yeah, that
That's
is kind of
wild.
crazy.
It's pretty dystopian.
I don't want to start that deep right now.
You're walking through Safeway and then like the digital billboard or the ad like quietly changes. And you're like, wait,
It's like a picture of you and like a Toyota, you know? Like,
that's the ads you're getting
yeah,
sent to you.
pictures of yourself.
He's been in Montana recently. It's like,
Buy a horse, me on a horse somewhere.
yeah, or like just hats. Just hats.
Yeah.
I think that's a scary future, and I think like we're actually probably more likely to go towards there than we are not, right? Like there's no limit on like there's no regulation realistically. And the people who own all of the data on you are the ones who are building and training all of the models. So like realistically, what world can we live in? That will we live in? Like I feel like that's just
It seems like ad personalization has only ever gone one direction, which is more personalized, right? Like you imagine at billboard ads and like the 50s magazine ads, you start to get some personalization there based on like location and which magazines you read. And then, you know, we have like Facebook ads and stuff today, which are super personalized. At what point do you think people go like, no? Like, I think there's probably a world where the three of us would say like, I don't want that. I don't want ads to be like that. I don't want to be in the ads, right? I don't want like my AI clone to be on like in the Toyota commercial.
yeah.
What do you think that looks like? Like pushback. When do people start pushing back, or do they?
Dude, I don't know, man. I think it's like
a hard
it's
question.
like the what is that? Like the frog in the boiling water analogy. It's like we're never really gonna turn it up all the way all at once, but it's just gonna keep increasing 1% at a time, and we'll find ourselves. This is super crazy dystopian, but I feel like that's just like without having any hard breaks or without just being more aware about like the things that we're building and how they affect us. That's just a natural tendency. Like I think that's just gonna happen without us really realizing it. Like it's like this week is, oh, I hate having to go on Amazon and order my coffee because I forget to refill it, blah, blah, blah. I can set up a subscription, whatever. Sometimes I end up with like 6 coffee things because like I just don't use them. I wish it would just automatically send me coffee whenever I needed it instead of me having to think about it. Like there's a level of like, that's a nice to have and that's a level of convenience, but how far can that deteriorate to, right?
Yeah, well, and then it gets to the point where it's like someone's collecting data on your coffee usage, and some competitive coffee brand will like pay extra for that data so that they can send you a targeted ad like a week before you run out of coffee.
Yeah.
So that you know, they know when to like start doing that and they can market their product. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we've had that on like a rudimentary version of this on Facebook for a while. It's like, oh, someone's recently moved locations or gotten a new job, and you can target them based on that. All of this, like personalization and ads getting increasingly more personalized, also enters us into the world of deepfakes. And we've seen a huge amount of deepfakes in the past year. What are your high-level thoughts on deepfakes and the trajectory that we're on right now, especially as someone who built Fake Tam?
Yeah, deepfakes are crazy. So high level thoughts, I think they're extremely like it's a technology that is very dangerous, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of positive value that can be gained from them. And I think the reason why I was exploring just like the deepfake side of it is because like we have these conversations that are always like, oh, these are so bad, this is so dangerous, this is so scary, but we never have the opposite conversation, which is like, oh, what could this be used for? So that was like the kind of, I mean, that was the reason why I built Fake Time. I was just like, is there a way to make this like super fun and interesting where it's not really harming anyone, but show people some sort of a positive use case for, I guess, Wave to Lip, which was like the model that I was using. And yeah, that was like, I think there is a world where like for every model that produces some sort of a deepfake or like that can be classified as that, there needs to be like a digital signature that is embedded in them, where if you like run an algorithm on it, you just know that it's fake or not. And it can't be like, yeah, it can't be removed. Like it has to be something that's just like embedded in the signal itself.
In an ideal world, that would be the case. But I think we're we've seen in the past year, there are a lot of people that are like, oh, we need more AI safeguards. And then there are people who are like, no, everything should be open source and we should be able to have like free reign or free control over whatever we do. And I think going forward, unless we have some sort of law or regulation, we'll just have like people on the opposite end who make it such that it doesn't have a digital signature, and then people on the other end that try and make it with more safeguards. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. In terms of the positive potential for these deepfakes, when you made Fake Time, you started using Wave to Lip. Talk a little bit more about the positive potential of these deepfakes or these synthetic humans.
So Wave to Lip is really interesting as a model. It's a lip syncing model. So you feed it a video, you feed it an audio, and it'll change whoever's in the video to look like they're saying whatever is in the new audio track. And the way it's built is really cool because it can work theoretically on any language, like throughout the world. So that can actually be really powerful because, I mean, for like translation of videos, for example, I think anyone who grew up in the West can, like, they have this like experience with these really shitty dubs, and like that's not really that's not something that was perceived as solvable before. Like people would just say, I have to deal with this. Like if I'm not in the US, if I don't really know English, then I have to deal with this, like Tony Stark speaking in like a very shitty Hindi. You know what I mean? Like I think being on the opposite end, making someone look like they're saying something they're not is very dangerous. Like it can be super dangerous, but it can be used for positive things, right? So I think it's just like a matter of exploration. You just need to let people kind of explore and play with things, and yeah, just make sure that people can't do too much harm. So, I mean, for me, like we're working on basically next generation versions of this model at Sync, and experiments are going well. It's kind of interesting. It's like actually a harder problem than you think to solve, because like people are different. Like the way that they say things are different. People with beards are really hard to make look like they can actually say something that you want them to say. There's a lot of like fun little small things like that, but I think like the future for us at Sync, like the first thing that we built is a synchronizer. It's basically, I would like to call it a next generation like lip syncing model. I don't think we're right at the next generation yet. I think we will have a breakthrough probably fairly soon, but it works quite well. I think for a lot of these situations in like areas where, like for like movies, it works quite well. It works really well in like natural footage. Like I think a big limitation of a lot of these models right now is you have to look directly into the camera. Like even the face swap models and like anything visually where it's like you're modifying a human in video, it's like a human in video is like me looking directly into the camera. Like that is not normal, right? Like people are running around in movies, they're like, there's action scenes. Some people speak a lot faster than others, like different skin tones, different skin colors. Like they're all challenges that you don't really think about until you start building this stuff. Yeah. I think I lost the thread there. I don't know what the question was.
Oh, I think that's super interesting, and like I love coming at it from this perspective of like what good can we do with these models, and I think like where it ends up, like okay, so let's say that we have like next generation lip syncing, right, and it's perfect, like it's like as good as it could be. You guys obviously are the ones that are going to develop this. I think we get to this point where like we just trust what we see online a lot less, and then the value of doing things in person goes up because like you know that you can trust your own experience rather than just like trust. You know that anything you see online could be fake, which might have like kind of positive implications in a roundabout way. But yeah, I love that positioning. Like with great power comes great responsibility. Any new technology can be used for like dangerous things.
Yeah.
Oh God.
But yeah, it's cool. It's cool to think about it as like a unifying force, right? Like you said, growing up in India or something, you watch these videos and you're just like, man, this sucks. Like I want to see the real Iron Man, I want to have like just as good of an experience as somebody in America.
Talking about sync. So you mentioned the synchronizer and your challenges in trying to improve the model that you're currently building. So you started off with Wave to Lip. Then you recruited the original researchers that worked on Wave to Lip. Now you're all part of the same company and working on the next model. Can you explain a little bit more about the behind the scenes of what's going on and how you're actually thinking about creating this, such that it works with those nuances that you mentioned?
So I don't like the word recruited because I think we came together kind of as like a team. It just was really like, we're called Sync Labs. It's actually short for Synchronicity Labs because it just was like a magical moment where we all were, yeah, it's just funny. Like we were just all in the same mindset and position at the same time, kind of working on tangentially related stuff. And we just came together as a team and we ended up being like really good friends that way too. Like it's just like works out well. It was really weird. It's like some of those things, like some things are just meant to happen that way. I'm a big believer in that. So some of the things that we are focused on, I'll start with the challenges that we have. So there's a couple, like one is the lip sync accuracy. Like that's like the core, like that's a core problem of the network is how do you increase the actual like lip sync accuracy of what it looks like someone is saying. It's a very tough problem to solve for because it requires like human intervention to say whether the output is good or not. So we can't really automate the process, which would be a big game-changing moment for us because like we have to spend a lot of time looking visually, like looking at the outputs and then grading them. Hey, is this better than the last model? Hey, is this better than this experiment? And that makes it really tough because like how many experiments do we, like I want to run all the experiments in the world, but one day if we're tired and we're looking at it and it's just like, there's 10 different things side by side and we choose the wrong one that actually is gonna, like the wrong experiment that's actually gonna move us forward. Like that's pretty challenging, right? So the idea for me is like, how do we make these experiments, it's like cycles of experiments much shorter? Like how do we even potentially release a model every week, right? Like everybody who's building in generative AI, they just go in a black box for 6 months and go try and develop something and then release it. Like why can't you release the most latest trace? Like for someone who's like a customer who's willing to be, let's say, an alpha or a beta ring, like why can't they just get access to the most recent experiment, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. That's kind of an approach that I want to take. And while we kind of get organized as a team to be able to actually do that, we're just like building in public along the way. So lip sync accuracy is number one. Number two is actually generating higher resolution, like lips and images. So that's actually less of a big problem. I think the problem there is actually just a function of like time and performance. Like if we just threw a bunch of GPUs at it and we just had infinite time, we would make perfect like pictures of people and like be able to put that back onto a video and have it like immediately work and like scale infinitely, right? But it's a function of like, how do you get it to work faster? How do you get it to work cheaper? And yeah, it's just like a cost optimization problem. And obviously we're pretty early, so like we're just like I wanted to stabilize cost for the end user first and then focus on quality and then on performance in that order. Getting to real time would unlock a ton of applications. Like I think getting to real time would be the game changer. I think if we get it to work in real time, which we have a good idea of how to get it to be that way, it would just like, I mean, imagine like having a new like human computer interface, like being able to like interact with an LLM by just like actually talking to it. And like we're in this podcast room and we have a lot of context on each other because like we can see body language and we can see like how we emote and like the fluctuations in our voice and whatever that is. Like human communication is like very like complex that way. What if you could have more like, one, your computer could understand you a little bit better, and two, you could like have a more human way of communicating with your computer. I don't know, that's super crazy, but like
We'll get there. Like that is the future at some point, right?
I think so, yeah. I think it's inevitable.
So you mentioned a few things there. The first was running experiments and kind of building those like iterative cycles, shortening the amount of time that it takes to do that. How do you think about like what frameworks are you setting up internally to run more experiments, get results quicker, adjust as necessary?
That itself is an experiment, right? Trying to figure out what's going to work for us.
Yeah.
Like if we make the experiment too short, we won't see progress. If we make it too long, then if we have a high chance of failure, it's like the longer the experiment is, the more risk we take on. So I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I would like to probably talk to more people about that to try and like figure it out. Right now, we're focused on like 2-week experiments, and we locked in the amount of data that we're going to run the experiment on, which is another kind of variable in the loop. So small amounts of data, shorter experiments, and then the ones that win will just increase, basically keep the time frame the same, and then increase the amount of data. So like going from like 50 hours to like 150 to like 1,000, and just going up from there. Yeah, I think that should work for us, but like that's another, like again, that's also an experiment. So we're gonna see if that works out over the next 3 months.
Interesting.
So I saw your eyes light up in the previous response where you were talking about if we get to real time, then the whole world changes. So one example is a new interface with computers or with LLMs. Now, instead of typing into a chat window, like, hey, give me this thing, you're actually speaking to a human. There's also real-time translation, which is kind of crazy. So things are being broadcast in English, but if you're in the Netherlands now, it's in Dutch with the lips match perfectly.
Yeah.
What are other use cases that are unlocked when we get real-time lip syncing?
So I think those are the two big ones, like a synthetic human. So if you ever, I mean, I'm a big sci-fi nerd, but like a synthetic human, it would be just super cool, right? Like just being able to have some sort of customer service that you can talk to that is actually, there's no human behind it, but it still solves all of your problems and still feels not like
Not
uncanny.
robotic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be really cool. And I think like the personal assistant, I hate the word companion because I think it could just like really is like really dystopian too. Like that could go so many weird directions. But I think just having like a personal assistant that knows you really well and can like do things on your behalf, and like I like the idea of like freeing up people's time. So if you can make something more human, people are going to want to use it more. And at the core of the problem, like if you want to generate, let's say, a video with somebody in it, like a synthetic human, or if you want to generate an avatar, the core of the problem is lip sync. Like if you can't get them to actually say what you want them to say realistically and convincingly, you have a pretty shitty product. And people like automatically, like it's wired in our brains. If our lips don't match the rest of our body language and like the audio that's coming out, it's like the trust factor is not there. So I think it's a very important problem to solve for. And that's why we're focused on it first. After that, everything else can happen. Like when you translate audio, for example, like delivery doesn't match up with like eye movements or like facial expressions and like maybe even like body movements and stuff like that. Like there's no limit there. Like you could real time modify a human to just like match and like make it seem like it's like a first party experience in any language. Yeah.
I think about this a lot in terms of content creation. So, for example, with this podcast, one thing that I do is we don't record intros while we're talking. I just go away, write an intro, and then record it. The ideal for me would be, 1, not have to write it at all, but that's a different point. 2 is just be able to take whatever's written and have an avatar just say it for me and an avatar that looks realistic. And it just says the things in my voice and it looks like I'm actually saying it. Because the format of the intro is relatively simple every single time, it kind of looks the same, just the words that I say change. So that would be like the ultimate ideal. But then one step further, it's like you get unlimited content generation. Now, instead of having one person sit down to create X amount of content, now they can create 1,000x the amount of content. Different languages, different niches, different subject areas. So it's pretty crazy.
It seems like there's the uncanny valley in this problem, right? Where our brains, we literally have like parts of our brains that identify like a human face, like what it's supposed to look like. And so our sensitivity to anything that isn't perfect is like super high, right? Like the first deepfakes that came out, you could tell that they were fake, even though they were like pretty good. If you look close enough, you're like, that's not really Joe Rogan, or like, that's not really Donald Trump. So it seems like it's just an incredibly hard problem to solve for. And, like you said, there's all these edge cases, right? Like the case you just talked about where you have somebody that's like looking into the camera saying, a couple sentences and it's like the same frame and everything. Probably not that far off from that, I would say. but getting like the real time, in motion, someone with a beard, all these like random things that make it really hard. Like, what do you think in terms of like timeline for something like that? Hard question.
It's a really hard question. I think getting to 80% is easy.
Yeah.
I think getting to 90% is like another year away from that. And I think getting to like the 99% is like a decade long kind of journey.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like the nature of AI, I think. But so when it comes, okay, I want to touch back on like the AI generated content thing. And Sam, you're so right. Like, I think like when content becomes that easy to generate, then it loses its value. I think like we still have a finite number of hours we can watch a day per person. So what becomes more valuable over time? Like, is it like the AI Mr. Beast of the world, or is it actually just Mr. Beast, right? Like, what's actually the... So I it's like super funny to me because like I think I actually don't see the future in AI generated content. I think like AI modified makes a lot of sense because...
Or AI augmented.
Yeah. And I actually see like a game of like spam filter, like email and spam filters. Like eventually the platforms will have to filter out AI generated content because it's going to be so much. And like, I think people want to see other people, to be honest. Like, I think like content has value because someone took time to create it. Like we took time to sit down and do this. You took time to like edit the pod, like I think we're entering a really weird world, but I don't think AI generated content is just 100% what people are going to watch. I think it's just a novelty right now, for sure.
I don't know that I entirely agree with you. I think, yes, not 100% of content will be consumed will be AI generated, but I think it just comes down to ultimately a recommendation problem and a curation problem. Already we live in a world where there's so much information, so much content that we can consume. And so we resort to things like a recommendation algorithm on YouTube or on Twitter, or curators. So some newsletters I subscribe to, I trust that they have taste and can curate things that I'm going to be interested in. And so I follow these curators for the work that they do. But there's no reason that we can't get to a point where this AI-generated content is so good that it actually is worth watching.
Yeah, I think the hard part there is that like good is very subjective, and there's like short-term good and long-term good, right? Like if Facebook is optimizing for keep you on the platform, what's good is these like rapid fire dopamine hits that just get you to flip to the next video or the next post or whatever. And if you have, let's say, real-time personalized AI generated content, what you essentially have is this like IV drip, like dopamine IV drip that's just like always on, always available. And at some point we'll have to like have some guardrails on that, right? It's like what, beyond just kind of the functional implications of having people like stare at their phones all day, which we're already headed towards.
Yeah.
It's like what kind of world do we want to live in, when this is ubiquitous, and how do we design systems to like reinforce that and encourage it? Really hard, big problems that, we're headed towards.
One of the teams that you're somewhat close to, or one of the products that we really like, is 12 Labs. And they have taken a fascinating approach, and it unlocks a ton of use cases specifically around video. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what 12 Labs does and what are some of the things that you think it unlocks.
Oh yeah, 12 Labs is sick. I've been playing with them for a while, and man, I was at a hackathon. Like they hosted one about 2 weeks ago, and they let everyone in that room had access to their new model. It was like the Pegasus model, and I don't think anyone else had access to it. So we were just really playing around with like crazy stuff. They did nerf it a little bit, which I was a little sad about. Like they cut off the basically it was an 85 character limit for the prompts you could feed it. But what it is like a video understanding model. So they create video embeddings. It's super interesting. Like they create video embeddings so that one, like the model you can use right now is like a retrieval based thing. So you can like search a video for the actual video, like visual content with text.
So for example, it could be show me the frame where the man is wearing a red t-shirt, or your search might be like the number 7, and then it'll pull up the football player with either the number 7 or the number 17 on their shirts.
Exactly. Or he does logo recognition too, so you can go and find logos of specific scenes and all this kind of stuff. It's like super crazy. And they have this like So that's a search. That's like a retrieval-based functionality. But they have this new model where you could start to generate text based off of the video. So it's like video to text generation.
What does that mean?
Yeah, yeah. So it's wild. Yeah, once you play with it, then I think it just like lights like a fire in your brain. But like for example, if you had like CCTV footage of a crime scene, and you just type in, you like upload it, you create the embeddings, and then you just type in, give me a summary of this and write a police report. It would just go scene by scene and like describe to you exactly what's going on in like a CCTV footage, and just automatically generate almost 100% accurate police report for you. And it's like to a scary degree, actually. It's like really good, super good.
Does this work the same way that Clip does, where it figures out what's in the frame, and then for every single frame, it kind of knows what's happening when it infers between the frames, and then uses that?
It's contextually aware, so it's like, yeah, it's operating on video as a base like layer.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. Not as the frames or the images.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like really cool.
I wonder if you could make like a poor man's version of this with GPT-4V, where you just go like frame by frame and have it like describe every frame, and then you give it back to GPT-4 and you're like, these are all the summaries of frames, write a like full description about what this clip is. That could be kind of an interesting project.
You absolutely can, but that's the rich man's version of this project.
Yeah, that's true.
All those API calls.
Yeah, Lava is quite good too.
Yeah?
Yeah. Lava is really good. It's also really fast too. Like really fast. So it's actually pretty cheap. I think like per picture it's probably like a cent, not even.
Yeah.
It's pretty good too.
Yeah, I've played around with it on Hugging Face. I haven't actually like pulled it and run it or anything, but it seems pretty good. I think from my own experience, the descriptions GPT-4V gives are like
better.
Quite a bit better.
Yeah, I know. Like so much faster.
Yeah.
When that API drops, it's going to be crazy. There's going to be so many viral videos on Twitter that weekend and the following week.
Yeah.
No, OpenAI is crazy. Like last year when they dropped ChatGPT, it was like right before Christmas. And so everybody's like with their family and like friends and stuff, and everyone's like talking about it. And then this year it's going to be the same thing. Like they're doing their conference. There's going to be all this viral content over the next couple months as people are, traveling and like exchanging ideas over dinner and whatever. It'll be cool. It'll be a fun holiday season, I think.
Yeah, it's great. I didn't think about that. That's wild.
Back to 12 Labs, one of the ideas that I had kind of around the time that we met, or that we were kind of competitors when we built the podcast search engine, is like a lot of video editors scrub through footage to find like a specific thing. What if you could just create a better search engine on top of YouTube for specifically this niche use case? Or better yet, maybe it's more focused on people's actual footage or the actual archive of data that they have. It's like, hey, just store all your data on like Google Drive or whatever. We'll use 12 Labs, and now instead of having to scrub through everything, you can actually find the specific scenes. So like that's one idea. Another idea that you had was making YouTube more accessible I think this is with the Pegasus model. Can you talk a little bit more about what that would look like?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone has ever seen those like you've seen the audio description stuff on like Netflix or whatever. Basically, like it's for visually impaired people, and the idea is it like goes and gives a scene by scene description of what's happening visually in the scene and through audio. So, I mean, it's not a far stretch. Well, one, it's very expensive to do that. So if you go on Netflix and you go on you just choose a random movie, some of them will have like these 7 tracks of like visually, like these tracks of audio for visually impaired people. And I would argue, I don't know the numbers on this, but like I would argue 90% of content out there does not. So a really simple and really honestly, I feel like a low hanging fruit use case for this would just be give a summary, generate an audio descriptive track. And you could like chain different models to do this. Like 12 Labs would essentially give you like the frame by frame understanding. And then you could pipe that to like an LLM like GPT-4 to just like pretty it up and make it sound better and just more concise and like fit the scenes. And then something like a voice generation model where then you can go and create the narration as well. Like you could just actually generate the soundtrack. Yeah, and it just sounds like putting models multi-chaining models and going multimodal is cool for sure.
Yeah, there are a few interesting thoughts there, right? One is the multimodal, stringing a bunch of models together to actually get to an output that you couldn't have done otherwise. The other is the specific use case of making things more accessible. Do you know how much money these companies make that actually do like accessibility for like movies on Amazon or on Netflix?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would guess a lot.
Yeah.
I would guess a lot of money. I guess like probably costs like upwards of hundreds of dollars a minute, probably.
$100 a minute? Wow.
That's crazy.
Well, so this is probably a stupid question, but these are audio descriptions of scenes in a movie. So you have the audio of the movie, and then you have like an accompanying audio track.
Typically, no. It's like basically like the dialogue will happen, and then in this like in between dialogues when people are doing things, like let's say someone walks out of a room, or like picks up a glass of water or whatever it is, there'll be like a narration where it's like, and they picked up the glass of water.
And will it like pause?
The movie continues running, so
Oh,
I think they
okay.
do some work to make sure that it fits between the dialogue and make sure that what they say is concise enough that it fits between things that are happening.
Oh, so it's like an
over the
actual
course.
narrator for like anything that you're
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
talking over the like.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of weird. Sometimes you're trying to
does.
turn on the subtitles or the audio, and then you hit that thing, and then it's like, and then Prady picked up the glass. Whose voice is this?
Yeah.
Crazy. Chaining models together. There are a bunch of different use cases that come out of this. This is basically any AI app that we have right now. What are some that come to mind?
Just like generically, like,
Generically, or things that you've been thinking about recently?
oh, this is a big, okay, this is like, I think there are models to do pretty much everything a human can, minus, to some extent, right? Like GPT vision is really good. Like machines can see now. And it's not like this is the first time that's happened, but they can both see and understand, which has never really been the case in one fell swoop, right? I mean, before we used to have like OpenCV and like machine vision models, which like could some point like they could do some specific tasks, but there was no way to actually like construct a visual, like a mental model of what's happening in the world based on vision. So that's like eyesight is taken care of. And then you have like another sense like hearing. I actually don't think we're there yet. I haven't seen anything super interesting there. I just haven't really explored either, to be honest. But like being able to like pipe in an audio file and then being able to understand what's happening based on the audio, like even this podcast, like you could transcribe it, sure. And based on the transcription, you could understand what we're talking about and who's talking, and like you could run speaker diarization and sentiment analysis probably too. Like you could see there's also voice analysis, like you could probably see like who's stressed, who's not, that kind of stuff. But there's not really like a foundational understanding of sound like we do have vision now, I would argue. But still, it's super powerful. So like eyesight, ears, and then like what else? Like obviously voice, like voice models are so good now. It's
Yeah.
like ridiculous.
11 Labs and
Yeah.
Kokai is the other one.
Kokui.
Kokui is out. It is. Yeah,
Kokui?
the frog, the little frog emoji.
Mm-hmm.
Any good?
It's really good. Yeah,
And they're open
Open
source.
source?
too.
free. Yeah, it's open source.
Yes.
They've been around. They just did a big release like a couple weeks ago of a new model, and it's
It's supposed to be fast too, right? I think.
yeah. I think it depends on what you run it on, but
Yeah, voice is pretty much taken care of. I think it's relatively indistinguishable. Like to anyone's like untrained ear, it's pretty much indistinguishable. I think there are still some limitations. Like we're probably 90% of the way there.
So yeah, we have voice, we have visual understanding, audio.
We have the ability to take action. We don't have taste. We don't have
taste and smell. We need olfactory models. That's
OpenAI. Let's go build them.
Yeah.
Well, actually, okay. So I did see this paper that I didn't read, but it was about models that can smell. Was it models that can smell or models that can taste? Models that can smell, I'm pretty sure. I didn't actually get the chance to read it, but I think at a high level, if I recall correctly, the way that it works is you detect kind of like what's in the air, and then based on like what's in the air, you can kind of infer the smell of those things.
I'm sure it worked the same way with taste. Probably
Mm.
very similar.
Yeah.
What's the use case there? I guess like drug detection instead of drug dogs, or like explosive
Yeah,
detection.
exactly.
That's actually like a huge industry if you can make that work.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't think about that.
That could be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I just don't want to smell your farts. You know?
Yeah, you
like,
could
it's
smell-
like,
you
from a, like
could-
being in a video call with somebody and being able to like, I mean, I don't know, like share a pie or something. I don't know, like that's weird.
Like a taste thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be a
Yeah.
viral smell product. It's something that you could buy. You like sell it to like the moms of teenage boys or something, and you like stick it in their room, like maybe by their door, and when they walk past, if they smell bad, it just like chirps at them, gives them a little beep. Sell it for like
Just an alarm that's going off.
$39 on TikTok.
Beep, beep, beep. Johnny needs to take a shower. This is crazy.
That's gonna happen. I'm gonna build that. If we ever get smell models, I will be building that product.
Oh my god.
God.
So
Hack
the-
houses
Yeah.
never survived.
Walk in there, it's just beep beep, smoke alarm going off.
I think that's all I had. Do you have anything else?
No, that was great.
Yeah.
Sick. Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
The
thanks
one
so
thing-
much.